speak and then unmute. If you could lay a few ground rules for us, and keep in mind it's 1 o'clock and we'll start rolling the cameras.
All right. Well, it is wonderful to join you all. We're about to start our utility committee meeting. And in doing this, we're getting better at GoToMeeting and using Zoom. And this is, of course, GoToMeeting for this format. It's important that all of us right now mute all of our mics unless we're talking. And none of us mind pausing for that quick delay in which when you're unmuting. I will remind you that with, I think, oh, never mind. I won't remind you. There was a faster way on Zoom to mute, but not on GoToMeeting, which is a space bar and A, by the way, on Zoom. And you hold them down. Childs will not be able to join us for this meeting, and otherwise, I think we're all here, except I'm looking for Representative Troutman, who I do not see. Okay. Mr. Ivy, if you could proceed, we are all ears, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, everyone. We have 2 presentations and then a couple of agreements at the end of this. I appreciate everybody going through the rigors of trying to get on this GoToMeeting. The City Commission is old hat at this kind of stuff, so this is not new for them, but we are looking forward to having a good, productive meeting today. The first presentation we have is going to be Tori Bombard. You know, we've been maintaining about $10 million over collection in our fuel rate, the reserve that we have in our fuel rate. And we've been having a hard time paying that back simply because gas prices have been tumbling. Every time we make an adjustment, it seems like natural gas prices go down again. So we looked at that as an opportunity to maybe do something to help out a little bit more during this time of crisis. And so I'm really proud of Tori for putting together this proposal, and it's quick and dirty, I hope, and not dirty, but quick. And maybe we can get a quick vote on this, and this would be to take effect beginning in May. So Tori, you want to start?
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I'm going to need, I guess, Kevin to make me the presenter so that I can show my slide.
I'm working on it. Give me 1 second.
Okay. I was going to say, yeah, I'm still blocked out on the screen.
Okay, you're now the presenter.
Okay, Tori, while you're getting this down, we're all with you because we feel the same trepidation we would have if we were presenting right now on this new format.
All right, let's see.
Tori, you need me to help you walk through anything?
No, I've done this. I'm just got to get to my little button over here. There we go.
Okay, we can see your screen now. Good job.
Okay, now are you seeing just the slide, correct? Or are you seeing my notes?
No, we're seeing the next slide, and the end of the slide show the stuff to the right you want to eliminate and just have it be the slide itself.
Okay.
The note section was attached, and the next slide.
Yeah.
There you go. And now.
Sorry about this, guys.
Tori, I'd just go with that. It's just that one slide anyway. There, that's good.
Yeah, I think I got it now. There we go.
There, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
As you recall, I came to you in March, and at that time, we had lowered the rate from $32.75 down to 27, and that was a 17.5% reduction. And this rate is now went in effect as April 1st. We're at 27. But as you heard from the general manager, due to the events of coronavirus, the financial impacts, the gas market is just really, like today's gas is $1.58. The utility would like to go ahead and accelerate lowering the rate again, and we would like to propose doing this for effective May 1st to the end of June, reducing the rate by $7, bringing it down to 20. Our average residential customers' bills are about 1,000 to 1,200 kilowatt hours. So this would be a savings if you combine lowering the rate from $32.75 down to 20, about $12.75 to $15.30 on somebody's electric bill for the fuel charge. Now, the graph that you see in front of you is showing our reserves as February, which is at 29.4 million. And it is the estimation from March to September. So I estimated if we reduce the rate to $20 for May and June, and then return the rate back as July to September, because a $20 fuel rate is not sustainable. If we were to maintain that rate, we would be out of reserves by February. So this is just what staff is recommending, is to, to help out our community due to all the hardships, to lower the rate effective May 1st to $20 into the end of June. And then unfortunately I'd come back at the June meeting and I'd have to raise it again so that we can maintain, the utility's financial health. So that is our proposal.
And you would probably recommend raising to $27 you would anticipate in July?
Yes.
Okay. Questions from anyone on the committee? Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Torrey, if by doing that, what would our, what the amount, lower, we go lower at $20 like you just suggested, how much would we fall down to in our recovery situation? And then if we move back to June or July, going to 27, where would that put us to as well? That's my two questions, two-part. It's a two-part question kind of thing.
Okay, I'm trying to get my mouse in rather marker can be. If we lowered it to the 20 and then bring it back to 27, sorry, not wanting to be nice, our reserve would be 20 million as of September.
Okay, and of course, that's where we want to try to maintain ourselves, I guess, as we had always indicated, around that amount. Is that correct?
That is correct, because we want to make sure that we have the proper reserves. Now, I think you had a two-part question for me. By lowering it to the 20, as of June, we would be about 24 million. And then if we raise it back to 27, it puts us about 19.8 million at fiscal year end.
Right, the 20 million that we want to be at.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Other questions by commissioners or committee members?
I'm on. I'd like to consider one change to this. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Rather than just say on July 1st that we automatically restore the 27, that we review it on July 1st with the intention of restoring back where we need to in order to see where we need to be. We may not need to go back to 27.
My understanding, Tori, is that you're coming back to us at July 1st, anticipating with the new recommendation, correct?
Yeah, because when you approve the rate, you're only approving it right now for the recommendation. I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm going to be back. It can't stay this low. Whatever time in July when I present again will be when you would make whatever rate it would be at that time.
Mr. Ivey.
Yeah, Tori, as I recall, you're presenting in June for a July adjustment, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so we're going to be back talking about fuel again at the first part of June. This rate would still be in effect. We can certainly have that conversation at that point in time. That's the beauty of our every 3-month adjustment process that we have.
Very good. Other comments? I'm looking for an active cam. Can we take the presentation down at this point in time so we can see everybody? Or maybe that's not on.
I have a question, Mayor Ashley. Down
Yes,
here in the
now,
bottom,
yes.
like Hollywood Square.
I see you, sir.
All right. You all, Joel and staff, you all have been through this process a lot more times than I have. But from a communication standpoint, how is this communicated to the ratepayers? Is this something that, you know, they see you giving them something and then taking it back away quickly? Is that, you know, how does that play out in the amongst the citizenry that have to pay the rates, that, you know, that have to, when you give them something and take it back, if we go that route that we're talking, does any conflict or issues ever come up with that you've seen in the past?
So that's a good question, and it's a difficult one to answer because I can't control what people are going to print or say. When we go out with the press release, we're going to make it very well known that this is a temporary measure that we're proposing, and then it would be going back up. So it's just really dependent on how that actually gets handled in the press. They've been pretty fair with us for the last couple of years. I think we would get decent treatment out of that. At the same time, we're going to be using all of our social media presences that we can, working with the city and the other departments to try to make sure the message gets out very well. But at the end of the day, whatever somebody decides to print in the newspaper or any other publication or television is going to be what they want it to be. So, you know, my thinking is that we go out with our press release, we stay in touch with the reporters, and just try to keep that message going over the next couple of months.
Well, and I think too, you know, this is an abnormal time, Mr. Troutman, from the standpoint of people needing relief. And so this is just a good measure of knowing we have an adequate reserve, that this milks down to a level that we have pre-decided we want to be comfortable with, to give the benefit of that to all the users in a time where they're all going to be looking harder for cash. And so I'm very appreciative, at least from my perspective, of your making this offer in the first place. Other committee members? Yes, Commissioner McCarley. You are showing unmuted, but we can't hear you. So let's try that. Might be muted on the top of the earpiece. Try again. Now try. While you work on that, and keep working on that, and so if you come in, we'll tell you. And Commissioner Reed, go ahead.
Thank you. Dick, and you know, we just recently lowered the rate, and of course that's what we're actually going to lower the rate to give people some extra relief. So I don't know why they would be opposed to that if we have to raise it back up. So I think we're at $27 now, aren't we?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
City Manager Delgado.
I hope you can hear me. I was going to say exactly the same thing Commissioner Reed said. Let's not forget that in our last meeting, you lowered the rate some $5. So this really is a significant opportunity for us to really help people out in need during this short period of time. I think coming back and explaining that while maintaining that initial reduction you saw just in our last meeting will be accepted at this point.
Commissioner McCarley.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay. Joel, I just had a question. I hate to rub salt in the wound, but with hurricane season starting June 1, what do we think I know we can't guess fuel prices to be. Are we going to see a spike in that so that June's going to look a little different than the graph that Tori showed us if we keep this at $20?
Yeah, and we are still seeing natural gas prices sustaining at a very low level. Generally speaking, you would anticipate that the prices would sneak up during the summertime because that's when peak production for generators are, and other people using them, commercial facilities as well. So we tend to have spikes in the summertime, but again, the beauty of our process to come in every 3 months is that we got a built-in protection that helps us with that. I mean, the fact is we're going to be back in June. So in a short 2 months, we're going to be talking about this again. So I'm coming at this proposal very much unafraid because I know that we can correct it if it starts looking bad.
Commissioner Walker, and then McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to staff, of course, for looking at the possibilities as we're discussing this particular matter, and of course, have a vote on the proposal that's being presented. But I think it's important we make sure we craft the information going out to our citizenry, our ratepayers, that, you know, reason why we're doing this is to be support, as we've already indicated in some dialogue already, because of what we're facing now. And of course, as well as the natural gas prices still remaining low as they are. But I think it is also important that they understand why we're doing that. And that's, again, where we craft this particular message to them. And I'm sure communications do a very good job with that, to share with them that, you know, this is a relief situation like the federal government is doing, even with what it's doing with the situation at hand as well. So, again, it's just important we make sure we craft it that way so they understand and know, even at the point where we may have the increases we do sometime in June to be effective July. That's why we did what we did back in the time of being support now.
Very good. That would take us to Commissioner McLeod.
Thank you. Just thinking about the summer and kind of adding on to what Commissioner McCarley said, are we fairly confident that we can stay at 27 through those, the months of July through September, with lowering it to 20 now? I know things can change, but just wanted to talk through that a little bit.
And really, is your question to some degree, should we hedge a little more because of that anticipation when we get to that point, Commissioner McLeod?
Right. That's just wanting to hear from staff on that for our ability to lower the rate to 20 right now, and our confidence in being able to hold it at 27 as we get into those peak months of later summer.
So, yeah, just real quick, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. One of the reasons why we created this reserve was so that we had more bandwidth to be able to go through situations like this. And this is working for us very, very well. That's another reason why I'm very much unafraid to put the rate where it is. And again, we can make adjustments in the near term to try to fix this. So I think, to answer your question, yes, I'm confident that we can weather it. Are we going to be right on the mark with it? We never are, because it's just a forecast, but it takes us down to 20 million by September. We're going to meet again in June, and then we're going to meet again in September to take another look at it. So, Commissioner McLeod, I'm confident that at least we can manage the process well enough. If we need to make adjustments, you're going to hear us say so during those times.
You got to appreciate this conservatism, Mr. Ivey, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's always good to be prepared.
Mr. Troutman, and then Mr. McGee.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I'm not against having the opportunity to lower the rate, but to the point that both Chad and also Sarah has made, if it's going to cause any angst, whether that be press related or later on in the year, why do we, and I'm just using this word now because it's the only word I can find, why do we fool ourselves to believe that we should go to as low as 20 if we should be a little bit, a smudge higher? That's the only point that I was hoping to try to bring out of you guys with that initial question. But I'm good with lowering the rate for we'll see where we fall once the vote comes.
Very good. Mr. McGee?
Do you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got an unrelated question to spin off from Ashley, is that will we be extending the grace period for our residents, our customers basically, who may have lost their job? They don't have that 150 to come up with on whatever the due date is. They haven't got the benefit of the stimulus yet. And so any discussion along there as far as extending the grace period for non-payment?
So we've instituted a no disconnect policy as we go through this period. And we can certainly revisit that as we go through time. And we'll check the financial impacts of what that brings. And so, I can tell you automatically, we're always going to work with our customers to try to make sure that they can, pay their bills and take care of their needs and their basic necessities. We've also waived doing any late fees. So that seems to help quite a bit too. And I'll tell you, is it having any effect? The number of calls that we have in our call center has dropped through the floor because people aren't having to worry about that right now. So that's caught on. And I think it's going to be, a month or maybe even 2 months before we have to really start worrying about that again. But we will be working with our customers to try to help that out.
Wonderful.
Right.
That's good news.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. I'm sure that was a question on a lot of listeners' minds as well.
Thank you.
Any other committee members? All right. Your next item, sir. Thank you, Tori. Oh, wait, no, we have to have we need a committee motion. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Make a motion that we accept the proposal as submitted.
Second.
All right, a motion from Commissioner Walker and second by, who was that?
English.
Mr. Commissioner Franklin. All right, discussion on the motion by any of the committee members. Any discussion? Yes, Commissioner Walker, sorry.
I did not make the motion. That was committee member Darrell Johnson. I was about to make the motion. He made the motion. Mr. Mayor, we'll make sure it's corrected for the minutes.
Thank you very much. I missed that. And committee member Johnson made the motion. Kelly, thank you. All right. Any other discussion? And is there any discussion by anyone in the audience? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye and aye, and hold your hand up. Aye. Opposed, same. No opposition. Unanimously passes. Thank you very much. Next item, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everyone. So we've been talking what seems like forever about what we're going to be doing with the replacement for Unit 3. And so we're here to present, hopefully the final presentation on what we're going to do. And what we're looking for is an advisory vote that lets us know that we're at least in alignment with what our plan is. And this is just an advisory vote, but we're going to be bringing the actual agreements, proposals and whatnot back to this body for final and formal approval as we get to it. And so I just want to kind of put that in the context of that. I'm particularly proud of the work that Mr. Beckham, Mr. Creeman, and a lot of the other staff, Ms. Bombard and others have put into really making this happen. So at this point, I would ask Mike Beckham to step us through this presentation, and we would be looking for that advisory vote, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Kevin, can you make me the presenter so I can put my presentation up?
Yeah, I'm working on it. Give me 1 second. I got to find you in the long list I got of everybody that's on this call, this scrolling. I'll get you in just a second, okay? Found you.
Okay.
Okay, you're now the presenter. Mike, you're now the presenter.
Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Does it look right? Is it full screen? It looks right to me. I have to make sure it does to you.
It's good, Mike.
All right. So this is another in our series of the next gen presentations, and this is, as Joel said, this is the one where we'll be asking for you to make a motion on basically on us moving forward to develop contractual terms around what we would like to do. So as we've mentioned, our fleet is aging, and our oldest oldest unit, or almost our oldest unit, is Unit 3, which is also our coal unit. So we talked about moving away from coal. Our Unit 3 will be 42 years old in 2024, which is when we suggested that we should close it down. Unit 8 is also an old unit, a combination of a combustion turbine that's a little younger and a steam turbine that's very old. Unit 5 is 30 years old and in about the 2031 time frame. And then Winston, the youngest unit, is not too far behind that. So we're going to be looking to move into the next phase of our generation and looking for some newer technology and something that makes more sense for us, given our equipment needs and also environmental requirements. And what, as Ron has presented to you in the past, what we've sort of landed on is this internal combustion engine. We are proposing to purchase 5 of those internal combustion engines, which would give us, they're 20 megawatts apiece. That would give us 100 megawatts total for a short of about, we mentioned about 136 when Unit 3 goes away. These will be located at the McIntosh Power Plant adjacent to Unit 5. We would plan to price that as an engineer, procure, and construct project, and we would propose for those to be operational by the end of 2022. As Ron has mentioned in the past, these provide a good service for us because they're extremely fast start. They start up, can be online in about 30 seconds and at full load in around 5 minutes. And they also have a very fast ramp rate, which makes them a good companion for solar. And when solar varies, these things can chase it around and fill in the gaps when solar drops as the clouds pass across on summer afternoons. These also have a very good heat rate, meaning that they generate good energy for the amount of gas that they use for this type of unit. It's extraordinarily good for this type of unit. We also mentioned that there would be a solar and battery component in this. We would be looking for about 50 to 75 megawatts of solar to help make up the remainder of that capacity that we need. We've been working with TEA, the Energy Authority, and they're developing an RFP as a part of an existing contract that they have. And we talked about this would include a small battery component. We don't want to commit to large battery at this point because batteries are still sort of in development and they're improving all the time. We would like to have a small battery component so we can understand the operation of it better and what part it plays. But quite frankly, we're pretty interested in the way that these internal combustion engines can support solar. So it could be that there's more of a combination of that type of support, the combustion engines, their ability to ramp fast, and batteries as we go forward. The life cycle on these, the panels, is 25 years or so. The inverters are about 10 years, and batteries are about 5 to 10 years. The way we did the analysis, we compared an equivalent peaking replacement option, which would be like a power purchase agreement, to self-building and building our own generation. As you know, we've told you before, peaking power is managed by the generators at the very top of the economic stack. They're the most expensive units to run, so you only put them on when you absolutely have to have them to get the peak on a hot summer afternoon or a cold winter morning. Our analysis used fixed and variable cost to own and operate options, and then we included a transmission component. We've mentioned to you in the past that transmission can actually be a deal breaker in some cases. It's very expensive to build, and people price that into their product when they sell us power. So transmission is an important piece to consider. Combustion turbines in this analysis and the power purchase agreement, we would base it on a combustion turbine. They have a better capital cost, but these ICEs that we're talking about building have better efficiency and flexibility than a combustion turbine would. What our analysis has told us is that a self-build internal combustion engine is the better alternative for us. It's comparatively less expensive year over year, and that $3 million per year is a $3 million savings or delta. That's a $3 million less per year on a levelized basis compared to a power purchase agreement, which is based on a 20-year purchase, the 20-year power purchase. There's significant advantages, and flexibility will help us manage the energy imbalance from solar that we talked about. And I also wanted to point out that an investment in transition will not necessarily increase access to cheaper power. In fact, we've run into that and that problem in some cases where we have considered purchasing or considered buying into things like solar farms, and we found out that the transmission ends up being, as I mentioned before, kind of a deal breaker. The transmission used in the power purchase agreement is an embedded expense for delivery, and added investment would increase the necessary charge. So we can't necessarily go build a little short run a transmission line and then connect into some cheaper power. So that too makes build on our own site a better option. We were proposed, this is our plan, to replace Unit 3 power with the 5 internal combustion engines and the 50 megawatt or so solar power plus about 10% battery storage. And in addition to that, we would combine that with demand management, interruptible load, and power purchase agreements for the remainder of the capacity. So based on all of that, we are seeking approval to move forward with developing a contract, which we would bring back to you for your vote. And then an extremely important caveat right now, or footnote, is that we are in a very liquid situation with credit markets right now, as you know, and an unfavorable turn in those credit markets could delay these plans. As wherever the coronavirus goes and wherever the economy and the credit market goes, we got to take that into consideration. So that could add some variability to the timing on this and what the final product ends up being. So with that said, we'd be looking for a motion for us to allow us to move to the next phase in developing the contract for your later approval. The financial side of this, despite borrowing $110 million for new generation, and this is something that we're all very concerned with, the debt ratio, it would remain within the AA range. As you can see, existing right now, we're at 42%, and over time, up to fiscal year 28, even with the new purchase, the new project, we would still have a declining debt ratio, and anything 60% or less would allow us to stay in that rating that we're in now, and this is only getting better over time, even with the new purchase. So this is well within our capacity to do this and keep a good debt ratio. Days cash on hand, you see that we're showing a dip there right around 2024 when Unit 3 goes away and as these units come online. But we still are well within the days cash on hand range that we need to be in for the AA range throughout. And soon after fiscal year 24, that starts to improve and right back up to about where we are currently. And this also assumes a FEMA reimbursement of 65% of the Irma restoration cost in fiscal year 21. So this is the motion that we're talking about, and I'm going to turn it over, Mayor Mutz or Joel, I'm going to turn it over to you for this part of it.
Mr. Mayor, this motion is a proposal or a recommendation by staff. This is your motion and your policy to enact as a body. If you all like that motion, we would propose that we make it this way, or however you're comfortable with. You can throw this away and do your own. You can carve it up and change it however you want. But this is just a recommendation from staff. We're not hearing you, sir. We're not hearing you, Mr. Mayor.
Can you hear me now? Can you
Yes,
hear me
sir.
now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you had mentioned at one time the 6th engine as a possibility, and that is not part of this at all. Do we want any language to cover that?
Actually, I would appreciate if we did have, and what we're talking about is that the 6th engine would be replacing other existing capacity out at McIntosh. And so because it was an opportunity purchase, we decided not to do it in favor of maintaining a better debt profile. But if we had the opportunity as part of this motion to consider the 6th at some point in time in the future, if the credit markets were favorable to us, then we would also bring that back to you at about the same time.
Okay. Is there a motion? Yeah, Committee Member English.
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and make the motion to accept the motion as printed with the adjunct of adding the 6th unit, supposing that our credit rating in the credit markets would be better at a later date when we move forward with the other pieces. But I got a couple of questions for Mike, if you get a second for the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second for the motion. And I hear Commissioner Walker saying second on the motion. All right, that opens it up for discussion. And what is that, committee member English?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, again. Mike, as far as the owning and operating and maintenance of these internal combustion generators versus the type generation we've had in the past, is there a distinct difference in the O&M, owning and maintenance?
One thing is that these are brand new units, which we haven't had in a while. So there would be an improvement. I'm sure we'd have the opportunity to work out something with the company that will supply these. These are going in quite a few places, and there's good support for them. And we've visited. Ron Creven has visited several sites where these are in operation, and there's good support for them. And I think we could anticipate. We get good service out of Siemens now, but on Unit 5, I think we can anticipate an even better level of support on our operations and maintenance than on these type units than we're currently even getting.
Okay, and another question for you. On the solar, refresh my memory, and I think we discussed it at the last meeting, 50 kilowatts would give you how many acres of solar array would we have? And then if we went to 75, and then are we specifically talking about the water department's land out on Old Polk City Road? Is that still the basis?
That's what we're primarily talking about. It's 50 megawatts, and it's about it used to be when we first started talking about solar, recently when we first started talking about solar, it was about 8 to 10 megawatts per acreage. They're now saying more like 6 to 7 as the panels have improved. So 50 megawatts is 350 acres. So 75 would be half again that, 500 to 600 acres. It's not an insubstantial amount of land, but yeah, we are primarily looking at the well field right now. There are some other sites that might be possible if that doesn't pan out for some reason.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Committee member McGee and then Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Got a question. Now, how will we pay for this equipment coming in? Is it going to be a bond or a loan or?
Yes.
On that.
Yeah, so we got a couple of different ways to go about this. We could go straight out to the bond market and try to bond. It's $110 million for the internal combustion engines. We could go straight to the bond market and try to bond the whole thing. If necessary, we could do bridge loans through banks, because we're going to be spending money out over time, not necessarily everything all at once. So I think the first payment, for example, might be about $20 million coming up this year, and then it might be another year before we need to do another one. So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So that gives us opportunity to look at the markets and then make the moves that we think is the best for us at the time. In terms of the solar, that's going to be a purchase power agreement, and that's going to be passed through in the fuel rate.
Okay. And you said, I saw on the chart where the days of cash go way down in 2024. Is the reason for the purchase, is that causing the days of cash go way down?
So a big piece of that is we're still going to have an overlap with, or at least that's the plan, to have an overlap with Unit 3 while these engines are being built, and then subsequently we're going to be servicing the debt that's associated with them. So that's what's bringing that down to that point. I don't know if Mike mentioned it, I think he did, but we are also looking at the potential of about a 3.5% to 4% base rate increase to account for this purchase. But I'll tell you, I am hesitant to throw a number out because that can go from anywhere from 0 to 6. Just depends on what's going on at the time. But I think we can do that and make a modest increase and still get these things put in and cover that debt. But you can see once you get past FY24, that's when Unit 3 goes away, and then all the savings are going to start showing up, and the amount of days cash starts to bounce back.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Beckham, if you could go back to the actual, I guess, where you're showing the motion and how you kind of summarize how the motion would come to be crafted. There was something in the motion that I still have some reservation, or not reservation, but some question about the 25 years that was mentioned, I think, as part of the motion that talks about the solar situation. Could you explain that a little more for me, please?
Just to make sure that everybody understood that if we do put solar on land, then that ties the land up. If we're counting on that solar to be a part of that capacity, that ties that land up. There's really nothing else you can do with it. The panels are there. They take up all the space, and there's really nothing else you can do with that land for 25 years. So there's well, maybe not with the well field, but with other land, there's an opportunity cost as for what you do with it with the solar versus what you could do with it otherwise. We just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Thanks for the usage. Okay. Thank you so very much.
Any other comments? Committee Member Johnson, and then Commissioner Madden.
I'm a little uncomfortable with the solar portion of this. I would like to see us, the motion indicates that as a package, we're going to go into this, but the time frame for the solar, as far as we're going to commit to a contract with a third party, and at what point do we commit to that, and at what point do we determine whether we're getting a good deal or not? Because I'd rather move on with the rest of it, because I think that's more critical, and put the solar on the back end of this thing if it makes sense later on to do the solar. But if you could just explain, I guess Mike or whoever would explain the financing and the commitment with regards to how this solar would come down, because the prices of solar, as I understand, are dropping, and maybe we can get a better deal. Maybe we can get better battery situation, because it just doesn't, the solar doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me right now with us doing the other stuff.
And Joel, maybe you weigh in on this first, and then Mike could follow up.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm looking at this deal in terms of the solar is all or nothing. So if we want to do the solar, we have to do these internal combustion engines for the reasons that Mike has already stated. They will support the intermittency and the variability of the solar much better than anything else. On the flip side of that, you don't necessarily have to have the solar because you're building the internal combustion engines. So I hear what you're saying, but I'll tell you this, because we know that we don't want to do solar by itself. If the internal combustion engine piece of this project was not going to work out, our suggestion would be don't do the solar either. And so we would come back to this body with that recommendation. And so I think, Mr. Johnson, to help address maybe some of your concerns, we're not going to go do the solar just because. We will bring that in tandem or after we get the deals done for the internal combustion engine. So that should give us another bite at the apple at that point. And in terms of the investment for solar and the batteries are going to be made by somebody else. And then just like we're doing with all our other solar arrays that we have around the system, we will just pay for the power output that they create whenever they create it. So if they're creating zero, we're buying zero. And just kind of works that way. And that's still a better way to go, because they can borrow the money cheaper with the investment tax credits than we can.
Mr. Beckham, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add to that. I just refer back to the slide that you don't have to put it up, but I'll just remind you that we're using the Energy Authority, TEA, which has a lot of expertise in this area to help us with the RFP on solar. So we would get a good, clear signal of what kind of a deal we could get on solar. It would just be an RFP, and we could make a decision whether or not to pursue a solar option. I guess the other comment I'd make about solar is that solar is renewable, and we just want to make sure that there is a component of that in there for your consideration, as so many other entities around the country are going with solar, and we don't want to just ignore that as part of our portfolio. So it's there. If it looks good, and you certainly would have a chance to vote on it going forward as to whether economically you think it's a good idea or not.
So, Mr. Johnson, respond to that if you'd like, because I see you have a question. Then we'll go to Commissioner Madden.
Okay, I just wanted clarification. So the natural gas part of this generation is an absolute necessity. The solar makes it look good. That's the icing on the cake, you might say, from a green standpoint. But we could do the natural gas combustion turbine engines without the solar later on if it looks like that solar doesn't make sense with regards to these contracts. Because we have to sign a contract, and we would buy all the power that the solar would generate, whether we needed it or not, at the price that the contract says. And as we speak, we're already buying solar, correct me if I'm wrong, at a higher price than what the market solar is now because of when we generated the contract.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. In terms of, we are buying solar at a very high rate because we were early adopters. The rate that we're paying for the solar is what the market was, back in the late 2000s is when we kind of started that program. And then into 2011, we really got hot and heavy with it. So we paid a price for that. But my commitment to you all is we're going to take a good look at the bids that we get back for the solar. And if we're not comfortable that we're not getting a really good price on it, I don't have a desire to push it forward because we've done our share of buying into the market before it was ever cool. So we're going to bring you a contract. You're going to be able to debate on it. You can turn it down or whatever you want to do. But if we're bringing it to you, it's because we believe that it's going to be the most fair price that we can get.
Okay. Commissioner Madden.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I just wanted, just if you could, Joel, speak to when I'm looking at the page with the staggered debt and how it kind of, the peak is in fiscal year 23, and then it begins to diminish by fiscal year 28. If you could just also bring for us the other chart where Unit 8 is 30 years old. It looks here maybe about 2025, or is that 2028? On my chart, it's difficult to see. It's just somewhere between 2024 and 2029 that Unit 8 will be 30 years old.
Yes, 2024.
And so then, and could you just kind of, certainly I know that it looks good that our debt is going to be decreasing, at the point where we're going to have to make an additional investment to replace some of these other older units. But if you could just maybe just give a snapshot of the future with regard to Unit 8, Unit 5, and how the debt will be decreasing and positioning us to make that next investment, and where you see that next investment, most likely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just looking at that chart, and Commissioner McLeod, an apology because we were going to doll that up a little bit based on some feedback that you had, but we weren't able to get that done. The normal usual debt ratio, and this is debt to assets, a normal usual debt ratio for a utility like us with a generator, we could be about 55%. And there are a lot of utilities that are higher than that, some are well higher. And then there's a lot that are trying to stay below that. So the target is to have the debt profile be as low as we can and should, but still be able to make the investments that we need on behalf of our consumers out over time. It's my goal to be as nimble and ready for that next layer of technology that might come along that we don't even know about. So to your point, in 2024, when the combustion turbine piece of Unit 8 is 30 years old, the steam portion of that, because it's a combined cycle unit, the steam portion of that is like mid-1950s vintage. So you kind of get a sense, we may have to run that one, the combustion turbine all by itself for a period of time if the steam engine runs out. So Just looking out over time, when that hits in 2024, we're at $401 million. We're not going to be looking to make an investment to replace Unit 8 at that point, but we will. Well, I hope we won't. If we do, it's because it just failed on us. But if we start the planning process, then you can kind of see another 5 years out. That's about how long that would take. So in FY 28, 29, our debt position is going to be really, really rock solid to be able to take on another sizable piece of debt. And then again, in the at the end of the decade, Unit 5, which is our big workhorse, natural gas combined cycle, that's 345 megawatts or so. So that you can imagine, to replace that in total, that's a couple of $100 million. So we want to constantly look at what our debt ratios are and try to be in that good position so that if we do have to replace in the mid-2030s, Unit 5, for example, that our debt profile can weather that storm and still keep us in good standing in terms of what our total debt load looks like. So I think I'm really excited. I think we're in a really good position when it comes to the debt to be able to take on those investments over time. And you know, I heard the word conservative earlier. As long as we can maintain a conservative outlook and take the steps that's necessary when they're necessary and do the right things, I think we're going to be rock solid for a very, very long time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Committee Member Johnson.
What is the status? Give us just a little overview, if you've got it, of the current solar contract that we have. How long does it last? And is there any kind of, give us a feel for, now we've sold, some people are paying extra to quote unquote buy solar. How much of that cost, of the additional cost over and above what it costs us to generate non-solar, is being covered by that cost? And but in general, I'm interested in knowing how long that contract lasts with, it used to be NRG. Is it still NRG or whoever it is that we have that contract, the purchase power agreement with the solar that we currently have?
Yeah, so we got 3 different solar arrangements, and NRG was just one of them. So that was like 3.3 megawatts, and we got 15 total. So I couldn't even tell you who owns those right now, because they've changed hands a couple of times, and it's just a matter of bookkeeping from our end. It's a matter of who we need to send a check to, because it's an investment for different organizations. The early adoption price that we're paying on just kind of an average basis is about, I want to say $139 a megawatt hour. Okay, 139, and that's, hold me to that, but that's close. The price that we would be looking for solar today would be less than $32 a megawatt hour. So you can kind of get a sense. The price of solar has plummeted like 75, 80% since maybe 2007 timeframe, 2009. So it's an opportunity to jump into the market where the prices are good. But if for whatever reason we can't bring it in on or about that, or even less than the number that I gave you at $32, then I'm not willing to even bring it forward. You'll hear about it, but you won't necessarily need to vote on it. There are communities that are doing what they call community solar. So they're allowing residences and businesses to buy into solar, and it's kind of on a virtual basis. You're just more or less investing in the solar farm that the utility is building. And it is a cost plus in order to get that purchase in. And the city of Tallahassee is wildly successful with their program. They're oversubscribed. Orlando Utilities Commission, they were oversubscribed really quick. So there are people that want that as part of their portfolio. Commercial installations, particularly, want that to be part of who they are, part of their own mantra, which we would certainly support. And one of the things that we're going to look at is this something that Lakeland needs to offer as part of this buy? We looked at trying to do it with the old parts of solar at the higher rate, but I couldn't in good conscience offer at that rate to my consumers because the price was already half that. by the time we were getting around to thinking that was a good idea. So if we can get it to come in at a fair price below $32, which includes the battery component of it, then I think we'll have a little bit better arrangement and something that we could take forward.
And the fact that the motion is written so that it allows us to consider the agreements doesn't mean that inherently we are doing the solar, Committee Member Johnson. It means we'll have an opportunity to decide that based on the numbers. And I think that's what I hear you saying is let's protect the downside of the upside of any benefits we can get if the prices go lower. Committee Member Johnson.
The only question was left unanswered, do we have any idea how long those contracts extend out? The current ones we have?
All solar contracts last 20 to 25 years. I've not seen one go shorter than that. And frankly, I haven't seen one go longer either. But that's just typical. Usually the solar, the developers for solar arrays will tell you it's probably 13 to 17 years before they get cash flow positive. And they want to make sure they've got plenty of time to make money off those investments, which I totally get and understand. So yeah, it's a 20 to 25 year investments. And so the arrays that we have out there already, they're probably only, 6 to 8 years old, maybe. And so we still got that much time left on them, 12 or more.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone? Mr. Troutman? I see you. Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion by the audience? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, same. I see one opposition. Was that correct? Commissioner Madden, were you for or against?
I was for.
Okay, for. Yes. I'm sorry, it was just a late hand. All right, so it unanimously passes.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it. That was just, I want to reiterate, this was a non-binding advisory vote that we're sort of in alignment with the plan that we're going forward with. You're going to have ample opportunities to shoot any part of this down in case it starts running off the tracks as we bring the agreements back before this body. So I do appreciate the support and the acknowledgement. Now we know what to do. We're going to move forward and start making things happen. But you can anticipate it will probably be at least 2-3 months before we're able to even bring anything back to you. So we've got time to take a look at the markets and make sure that we're still going the right direction.
Great. Well, we appreciate your thorough analysis, Mr. Beckham. Thank you very much for your presentation. Ms. Siriani, do you have anything? I noticed your mic's open.
Yes, sir. We have a number of contracts to consider for Utility Committee.
All right. Go ahead.
The first item that we have is an agreement with Circuit Breaker Sales, Inc. This is for an agreement for Lakeland Electric's need to overhaul 9 of its breakers. They're in need of service. Typically, that service is done every 10 years. These particular 9 breakers have been in service for approximately 27 years. They were initially installed when the plant was built. The city's purchasing department went out for an RFP in February. We had a number of responses come back. There were 2 that were lower priced, 2 vendors that were lower priced. However, one wasn't capable of performing the entire scope of work, and the other one did not meet the city's specifications. So Circuit Breaker Sales is seeking the award of the contract in a total amount of $84,150. The services will include disassembly, cleaning, inspection, and standard part replacement. This is included in Lakeland Electric's FY20 budget, and we'd ask for your favorable approval.
All right. Is there a motion to approve? And that
Second.
Was from, so the motion was made by Commissioner Member Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Walker. Correct? All right. Discussion. We had an opportunity on our agenda study to take a look at this earlier, but we haven't as a committee. All right. I see no discussion. Don't know if there's any audience discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by your right, just raising your hand. Since you're muted, it doesn't work otherwise. And opposed? No opposition, unanimously passes. Thank you.
The second item we have is an agreement with GSC Enterprises doing business as Fidelity Express. This is for Lakeland Electric's retail payment processing services that enable the customers, Lakeland Electric customers, to pay their utility bills. Lakeland Electric has a number of vendors that provide these services. Fidelity Express is one of those vendors. They've been providing this service since 2003. So the city's purchasing department has approved them to provide the retail processing. The term of the agreement is a one-year term. It has 3 additional one-year renewal options. There is no cost to the city with regard to this particular contract. The cost is the rate of $1.50 per transaction that customers would pay for using these services. And we would ask for your favorable approval.
Okay, is there a motion? Commissioner Walker, and then a second by Commissioner McCarley. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, any discussion by the audience? All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes.
The next item that we have is an agreement with Vote Power International. This is for replacement of the SCR catalyst modules for Unit 5. The SCR controls the nitrogen oxide emissions from the unit, and we need to maintain that in order to ensure compliance with emissions requirements. On January 8th, 2020, the city's purchasing department issued a bid to seek contractors who could furnish and install these modules. We had 7 contractors that provided responses. Vote Power International was the lowest, most responsible vendor. The total cost of the services here is $427,100. That includes an additional $7,000 for disposal of the existing catalyst. All these services will be performed in accordance with Lakeland Electric's scheduled fall outage, which is set to occur in October of 2020. This is included in the FY20 budget as well, and we would ask for your favorable approval.
Is there a motion to approve? Committee Member Johnson with the motion. I like this. And is there a second? Commissioner Franklin. That's good. Discussion. Started something, Sarah. All right, seeing no discussion, any from the audience? Commissioner Reed, no, we'll go back for discussion. Go ahead. You need to unmute, sir.
I was sorry, I was getting ready to vote.
Oh, sorry. He's just quick on the trigger.
I'm a quick thing.
Railroading things too fast. I apologize and hate to disappoint you. Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes. Thank you.
The last item that we have is a change order number 6 with Siemens Energy. This is for an upgrade to Unit 5's combustion hardware, and it also extends the remaining long-term maintenance agreement with Siemens. In 2010 is when the City Commission originally approved a long-term maintenance agreement with Siemens for labor with regard to inspection maintenance services to repair or heat recovery, steam generator, the steam turbine, the generator, and the turbine valves. Proper maintenance is essential in keeping the reliability and performance of the unit. Pursuant to this agreement, Siemens will replace the existing combustion hardware with the newly designed next-gen upgrade hardware. Essentially, this will eliminate 2 program outages, and it will also decrease Unit 5's heat rate, which will result in burning less fuel. At the conclusion of the fall 2020 outage, the existing long-term maintenance agreement with Siemens would expire after 48,000 operating hours, which is set to occur in 2027. So the extension of this particular maintenance agreement takes us out to operating hours estimated at 66,000 operating hours. to occur around 2030. Pursuant to that agreement, Siemens has to provide certain performance guarantees, which are secured by liquidated damages at a capped rate of $1 million. The additional changes would include restructuring the payments that the city is required to pay pursuant to the contract, and that would start in 2021, which would result in a reduction of about 5.1% in operating costs and a savings of just over $3 million in costs. The total cost of change order number 6 is $13,292,663. That includes that $5.5 million for hardware upgrades as well. And this will be subject to budget approval in years FY21 to FY30 for those budget years. I'd ask for your favorable approval.
See, you thought some of your upgrades were expensive. The advantage of this, of course, though, is that it is less expensive to operate and it does keep it cooler, which makes it last longer. And I don't know, we have a lot of prerogatives anyway, and we missed 2 outages, which is good. Any questions on this by the committee? Committee member Johnson.
I think my question was just discussed. This is not a competitive situation, I'm assuming, because Siemens is the only one that can do this work. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We wouldn't. This is Siemens is the original equipment manufacturer, and Siemens has the contract that has serviced this product, serviced the unit for a number of years.
And also, because we had an issue with Siemens a number of years ago. Did we ever get all our money out of on that situation with regards to the insurance company and Siemens and everything else?
We reached a settlement agreement with Siemens to deal with that particular issue, I believe, the one you're referring to.
Which was, I believe, was that unit, that was unit 5, wasn't it? We had a bearing problem or something, or bolt problem or something like that. Is there any way to bring in a consultant to determine that the price that we're paying for this is reasonable under the circumstances? I know we can't do a competitive bid, but in comparison with other units, and because that particular unit is the oldest unit of that type that Siemens has out there, isn't it? Wasn't it unit number 1?
We've got Steve Marshall, I believe, our engineer who is overseeing this project is online and could probably speak to some of the questions that you have with regard to the unit itself.
Yes, I can answer some of your questions. Let's go back to the one about the outage. The one that you're referring to, we did some blade damage, and we had enough doubt as to what caused it that it might have gone back to the workmanship of Siemens. So we negotiated with Siemens, and Siemens was very fair. They agreed, and they actually bore the entire expense of that outage. So they did very well by us. In terms of bringing a consultant in, I honestly don't think so. We can always find a consultant that's willing to come in and render an opinion and take our money. But what I can tell you is that all pricing is extremely confidential and locked down. Every person that has an agreement has a non-disclosure. So, for example, when we go to users groups to talk with other users, we can talk about all the technical stuff, but all this stuff is out of bounds.
Good question, though. Good question. And Mr. Marshall, if I could add one other question, the working relationship with Siemens, characterize that.
I believe it's very good, because if you step back and if you look at it, when we have a problem, they respond quickly. We pay a lot of money to them. There is no doubt about that. But if you step back and if you look at the performance of our unit in terms of efficiency and availability, we're knocking it out of the park. So we're getting extremely good value.
Okay, good. So at least, Mr. Johnson, you don't hear a hesitancy. Any other comments or questions? Any by the audience? Seeing that, Mr. Johnson, did you have another question, sir? No, okay. All those in favor, raise your hand.
We need a
Opposed, same.
motion.
We need to make I make a motion. We had a motion, Mayor. I make the motion.
My apology. Commissioner Walker, and who's the second on this one? And that will be Committee Member English. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same. Unanimously passes as well. All right, Mr. Ivy, anything else?
Mr. Mayor, I would just conclude by saying that your Lakeland Electric staff is taking steps, as is the rest of the city, to deal with this COVID-19 outbreak. We've got over 70 people that have been working from home for about 2 weeks, and we're looking to take some more steps based on the governor's recommendations to get more people in a safety situation. Our overarching goal is to help with the flattening the curve, the slow the rate of the spread and these kinds of things. So we are looking to take some extra steps, probably beginning this week. But I can't tell you how proud I am of staff. They're stepping forward. They know that they're essential services providers, and they're doing the right things and making great things happen. So just look forward to the continued partnership with you all in the community. And I absolutely look forward to this coming to a conclusion soon, I hope. So thank you.
Thank you for all that work and preparation. Are there any other questions by committee members for Mr. Ivy? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? I see Mr. Reed, and a second. All right, Mr. English. All those in favor signify by saying, or by holding up your hand. Opposed, same. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. And don't forget to charge your Jabra mics before the commission meeting. Thank you.